Hello and welcome to the Quite Like podcast again. I'm Pat Yates. Today we have a great conversation. If you like email marketing and you really want to figure out how to juice that up, we're going to talk to Dean Ginsberg with Winback Pro, and they concentrate on taking your incremental value of your email, not just the actual email itself. They're trying to revive your email list. So if you have 150,000 people and only 20,000 of them have done anything in the last year and a half, you have 130,000 leads. They want to try to find the button that'll make these people work with that. They talk a little bit about the dead email. They have contingency-based pricing. They have a lot of opportunity to be able to help you with an area that you're probably not doing as well as you would really want to. So I'm excited to talk to Dean about this. And again, if you have questions about any of these vendors that we talk to, you can always give me an email to pat@quietlight.com. If you have questions about your business, thinking about selling it, then obviously we're here to help with that too. Today's conversation should help you though. If you're a direct e-commerce marketer and you like to concentrate on your email list, here may be a way for you to revive some of those people that may not be active. I think Dean's got a lot of knowledge with Winback Pro, so I'm anxious to talk to him. Let's get right to it. Dean, welcome to the Quite Like podcast today. I'm excited to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, it's great. I know we were just talking. You're up in Brooklyn and New York. And are you like a sports fan up there? Who are you? Yankees, Giants, or Jets? What do we got?
I grew up a big sports fan and it's dropped off since then, but I was a big Giants and Yankees fan.
That's probably kind of required there, right? The Jets would have to get a little bit better for you to be able to do that anyway.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll go to any football game, I just like being
there. I know you have a business, Winback Pro, that we're going to talk about email and how people can, utilize that channel. But I always love for my listeners to hear a little bit more about your background and, where you started in business, maybe schooling, things like that. Tell us all about it. We're anxious to hear.
Yeah, I have a crazy background. So I think, oh my God, I could go back pretty far. My first business, I started when I was 14. I grew up in New York City and I used to throw dance parties for high school kids in lofts that I found on Craigslist, which is insane. I built that up. We actually ended up building it to having 5 major events across the city every year. And then we donate half the money to charity. So that was kind of my first foray into the business world, which is a little illegal, a lot of fun, but kind of school of hard knocks there. And then when I was in college, I started a coach bus transportation service to bring college students home for school break. And that was when I started building, really selling tickets online, got me into e-commerce. But the first tickets were sold, I printed it from Microsoft Word and I signed each ticket and then sold them in the quad.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah. And then I started a summer storage service for college students. And that's really where I kind of saw the impact of UX and conversion rate optimization. It was the first storefront I built on Shopify. And what's hilarious is I spent about $30,000 money that I made from the previous businesses building that company out. Wow. And if I had just taken that $30,000 and bought Shopify stock in 2010, I would be in a much different place in my life.
You'd have been much happier at this point. You wouldn't have had to worry about it. That's a great point. So
a lot less work.
Yeah. So what other things, you had to have something that you really enjoyed about email before you started Winback Pro. What would that have been? What gave you the itch?
I ended up being the first hire at a company called Daybreaker. And Daybreaker throws morning dance parties around the world. And when I was on that team, just in the course of 2 years, we expanded to 28 cities. It was all bootstrapped. One of the founders was the founder of General Assembly. And my actual title was Founder's Apprentice to Matthew Breimer, who was one of the founders of GA. And I got to get kind of integrated into the GA team. I got to we did a lot of sponsorships. So I worked a lot with Nike, Samsung, the NFL. And I was at a pretty young age pulled in as a contributor to these very advanced marketing teams. And Daybreaker was built with no paid marketing. So it was only email, word of mouth, and the events became pretty viral, a lot of press. Wow. In a short period of time, we built up a pretty sizable email list, and the whole company was built around email. So getting good at marketing for that was about getting good about branding, getting good about events, but really about what does it mean to build community through email. And in the process of doing that, I would kind of look at some of these like bigger companies and their email program and what was possible and the way they thought about it. And I was like, we're doing stuff that they're not doing, and
Yeah.
we're moving faster than they're moving. So I ended up building a consulting firm that did digital transformations for mostly private equity companies. So the PE firm would make it acquire a brand, usually a legacy brand, and then bring us in as the execution partner to revamp their whole e-commerce infrastructure. And my job was particularly around conversion rate optimization, email, the omni-channel, and data infrastructure.
Right.
And over time, I was just like, I love the data infrastructure and the email side. So I ended up building a different consulting group just focused on that. So yeah, Winback is like a very long time coming of actually, starting brand side very broad, narrowing in, and then narrowing in again and again.
It's really funny. When you look at Winback Pro, something struck me when I hit the first page. It says join the wait list. You talk about something that makes you think that there is some incredible results, which I'm sure they are. So I want to dive into that a little bit. So you did all the background stuff and you went to Winback Pro, and email is not the easiest thing for a lot of people to pull off. And some people think it's an old school model of being able to market, but clearly not. Tell us about the philosophy behind Winback. You don't have to get into the details yet, but what made you decide this is the pain point that a lot of people have that I can fix?
Yeah. When I was running my previous firm was called Stacked, and I was oftentimes brought in at the C level or by the board to revamp the lifecycle program. And then on a day-to-day, I'm working with the retention team. And pretty consistently, I'd run into this conversation where the CEO or the board is like, we need a revenue bump. Why don't we just email everybody on the list? Which, if you're on the retention side, you're just like, please don't do that. There's this thing called deliverability, and it will mess up our whole program. And also, like, stay out of my sandbox, right?
Yeah.
And so I was often the liaison in those conversations to advocate for the retention team while also showing the company that you can drive lift without performing bad practices that are eventually going to hurt the program.
Sure.
But really, when I looked at it, I was like, to be honest, like, I just keep saying this thing, like, best practices, we should do this. And I'm just like one of the most advanced people in the space, like charging crazy rates. And to be honest, when it comes to like deliverability, I was more like echoing sound bites than I deeply understood the first principles of what it meant to, like, what was the best strategy for the dormant audience, right? And that was where this all kind of came about. I went through this like 6 months putting my head down and really thinking about what would it look like to build a program specifically around dormant audiences that would both win them back at a higher rate, but also reduce the risk in their targeting, so that when you're having the business conversation with the C-suite and the board, it's not just we follow best practices and this is what we're told to do. It's like, we deeply understand this topic. We understand where to take risks and where not to take risks. And because of that, we can drive actual lift across the program while improving deliverability. So it was really just a process of like narrowing, and recognizing that, this is not a niche space. This is, for some brands, it's 80% of their list is considered dormant. And these emails just sit there. And I've always been a big advocate for doing something with what you already have, as opposed to paying money to get new things. So yeah, we built this program. To be honest, when I started, I didn't know if it would work. Pretty quickly, the results started to come through, and it's been pretty amazing.
I would imagine it is because, as an e-com entrepreneur myself, you look at your mailing list as one thing. It's an ability to have a touch point, and you can you can look at the monetization from a top level, but sometimes you don't see, those dead emails that are around for 3 or 4 years that, and sometimes you walk past that because if you get good results against what the normal metrics are, you may not think anything of it, but there's so many things out there that you can gain. Tell us a little bit about, I know that you had how you work. There were 4 real steps, and I'll mention them because they may not be in order: evaluation, filtering, playbook, and incremental revenue. So tell us a little bit, if you're coming in and someone's evaluating with you, what the criteria is. They have to be a certain size. Is there a certain amount of email addresses you need?
Yeah, we've been sort of playing around with that, as this company's pretty young. So now we're pretty clear. Like, if the company's doing over $20 million in e-commerce revenue, they're likely going to be a good fit. But one of the things we do even before we sign is we run an estimate of how much lift we can generate for the program. And then we make a decision of if that's going to be worth our time and if it's worth the brand's time.
Sure.
Because we charge just a percentage of the incremental revenue that we generate from the dormant audience. So we take on the risk of can we drive revenue here? And so it's up to us to do that upfront work to figure out if this is going to be worth everybody's time.
So in that process, tell us a little bit of how it would work. I mean, you don't have to give any trade secrets, but if someone comes in and has you analyze it and you say, yes, let's go, is there another platform? Let's say they're using a MailChimp or Klaviyo or something like that. How do you end up working it from the point after you analyze it to where you're actually getting in there and doing the work?
So we're up and live within 10 business days of the kickoff call. We build all the flows. We do all the creative. We build them all inside of their ESP. We also set up a custom dashboard that measures incremental lift by pulling from their e-commerce platform and from their ESP. And then we have a number of deliverability tools that we set up and the team manages. So the first thing that we do with the brand is we run a deliverability audit. Like, what is the baseline structure of the account? Are there things that can be cleaned up even before we start targeting this riskier audience, right? We build out all the copy, and then all the copy that we leverage, we've tested this across all these different brands, and we're constantly optimizing the general templates and then customizing it for the brand itself. Then we set all of that up in their ESP. We start to pulse users through, and we make adjustments and tests as we're going to improve the results. So to be honest, it's pretty heavy lift in terms of onboarding. Like, we're not really a product and we're not really an agency. We're like a product-led service. But we're really taking on the brunt of it so that the team can focus on their active audiences. And then we're only charging a percentage of the lift that we generate if we're successful.
That's amazing. So it doesn't really matter what system they're sending it out of. You come in, you look at those, and is it just straight marketing? Is it that you guys have a philosophy of how you send these out and what the marketing says? Is it tied to a discount? What usually moves the needle for people to be able to have some success with you?
Yeah, there's two parts to it. One is you have to figure out which are the safe emails and which ones are the toxic ones, right? So when people are looking at a dormant audience, they're typically taking a binary approach, right? User has not engaged with email in X amount of days, do not email them, except for like Black Friday, and then they expand the audience definition. Right. And that is really kind of the worst of both worlds. You're like building up risk in the list, and then you're actually just hitting them. You're making a like sudden movement to hit them more rapidly, which signals to the inbox provider a number of red flags. So the first piece is when we're building out an individual risk score for all of the emails in that audience, we're saying these emails are risky, these emails are less risky, these emails are good, right? Then we're filtering out the bad emails using a different range of filters depending on the score. And I go into detail on that because that's really the critical factor, right? It's if you can identify who is safe and who is not safe to email, you can expand your targetable segment significantly. And just expanding your targetable segment with content that is specifically tailored to that segment, you can drive lift. When you combine that with the templates that we know drive high engagement, you're also signaling to the inbox provider that these are emails that people want to receive, right? So if the inbox provider is like, these are emails that people want to receive, not only do you get into the promotions tab out of spam, but there's instances where you get into the primaries tab, and that's where you see engagement really spike. And as long as your content structure and your targeting are such that you're not getting high spam rates and you're staying well below their thresholds, then you're actually driving a very positive program, both for deliverability and for performance. So it's really this two-pronged approach. Like, are we emailing people who are safe? Are we expanding the targetable audience in a safe way? And then are the emails that we're driving not only driving engagement and conversions, but are they signaling to the ISP that we are performing safe and like best practices when targeting this audience? And that begins a snowball effect, right? And so that's the results are not, it's not like a one one trick kind of like pulls it off.
Yeah.
It's these two elements that play off of each other, and then the team that is constantly looking at data not just available in the ESP, but in our deliverability monitoring suite to figure out, okay, this content is performing for this inbox provider, but not for this other one. We need to adjust the segments to kind of signal out this one inbox provider and try different copy. So it's very much like an active approach.
And it also seems like obviously it's an ongoing process that if people do this, it may not be one that changes it. It might be 2 or 3 emails. I mean, is that common? Is it something that happens quickly or it has to happen over time?
It has to happen over time. So the way that we do it is we build out flows. Typically the flows are like 5 to 7 emails, and we're building out flows for different subsegments. But then once we can get somebody to engage, then we know at a certain threshold that this person is not only a real email, meaning like they are not a spam trap, they're not going to get flagged, but they're back on the hook and they can now be pulled back into the evergreen email program of the brand, right? So the Winback flow itself actually drives lift, but a bigger impact is that it drives re-engagement. And then once a user is re-engaged, we now know that we can pull them back into our regular cycle, expand our targetable audience without expanding our risk definitions.
Okay. So are there things verticals that work better for you? I mean, are there business services, e-com services? Does it cross over, or are there things that are just super successful in your funnel?
We're just focused on e-commerce brands. And that's not to say that this strategy wouldn't work in other verticals. But we've just found that we have a sweet spot on e-commerce. So when we're sort of building out our scoring algorithm, when we're building out our segments, when we're building out our copy structure, all of that has been tested and proven across e-commerce brands. And so that's what we're really structured and focused on. Even within e-commerce, there's many different types of brands, both in terms of how large they are, but also industries, subscription versus one-time purchase, large average order values versus small average order values. We're finding success pretty much across all those verticals, but we're still testing and seeing if there's an opportunity to narrow down even further.
That's a great way to go about it, and especially if it's all e-commerce. You have some customers I saw in there, and I'll throw a few out. HelloFresh and Burger King. I was sort of surprised to see, like the Burger King. That's incredibly interesting to me how they use lists like that to be able to do it. Because you would think most is app driven or digital. Are there examples of things that you can talk about? I mean, I don't want to give away trade secrets of things that have worked out in the past.
No. Well, so to clarify on HelloFresh and Burger King, those were both clients of Stack Collective, my previous business.
Gotcha.
On the website, that's more referencing like these are companies that I've helped grow personally. But for Winback, we're working with like True Classic. We've worked with Ridge Wallets, Thesis. We work with Thuma. We work with a number of like very fast growing e-commerce brands and have been passed around in those circles. And it's really just been word of mouth. And in terms of like what the strategy is actually pretty consistent across all the brands. The copy may adjust, the different tests we're running a very standard playbook of tests. And then the results from those tests actually dictate like what direction we go in.
So when customers come in and work with you all, how do they get, I know they get feedback inside their system. Do you all do reporting that shows this lift and things like this and different segments of it? How do they get feedback other than just seeing the numbers come in?
So two pieces. One is like we measure lift against the holdout audience. So we take the audience and right before the first email send, we split out. For some brands, it's 50-50. Some brands, it's 90-10. But a portion of that audience we're not going to email. And then we measure the revenue generated by the control group against the revenue generated by the target audience. That we're isolating just the impact of our program instead of, they saw a Facebook ad, they referred by a friend, they had a random thought in the shower, right? So many things can drive a purchase for particularly this dormant audience. Measuring it against a holdout allows us to just isolate what is the impact of our program versus not running our program. We break that down for the brands, not just in terms of what incremental revenue we drove, but also what is the percentage of the discounts that they use between the target and the holdout. what is the profit margin lift that we saw using a COGS report? So we really have this like these ethos in the company of build for business owners. And business owners don't just want to see this is how much revenue you drove me, but this is how much profit you led, right? And then all the tests that we're running are not just optimized for how can we grow revenue, it's how can we drive whatever metric is most important to the brand. And for some, that's like, we want to do very low offers and we want to just focus on profit margin, right? Okay, well, now we're going to run a bunch of tests and we're going to see how these tests impacted both our profit margin and our discount amount relative to a holdout audience. So yeah, I mean, like we spend a lot of time on analytics because ultimately, if you're not measuring it, it's not really happening.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I see that everything is success-based. I mean, obviously they can come in and talk to you during the evaluation process about what the cost is and everything like that. So they have all that laid out before they get the campaign running, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So part of it is we do an estimated lift and there's sort of a high, medium, low. It's usually a wide range, but the way that we build that list is we look at what is the performance on a revenue per email basis across all the brands that we're working with. And we cluster those by, who is this program performing like astonishingly well for? Who is it performing like pretty good, but not great? And who's kind of in the middle? And so those numbers that we're pulling for those estimates, we don't know which type of brand they are until we start running the program, but we know they're going to fall into one of those clusters. So they have a pretty good idea of the revenue that we're going to drive. And we also have a good idea of the revenue we can drive and if it's worth our time to focus on them or another brand.
Yeah, I think that people have to understand that sometimes you just don't, if email is one of those that I see a lot of people say, I already have a list, people will be engaged, eventually they're going to buy, and they just leave that thing dormant and get the results. I mean, is there a period of time, do you have to sign a contract for a period of time to be able to start getting traction, or do you guys go ad hoc over a period of time? How is that structured?
So we do ad hoc. So yeah, there's a 14-day out clause, contracts are month to month. There's a setup cost, which includes a deliverability audit. And then everything's on performance after that. So that's how it's currently structured. There's a chance that could change in the future. But right now we're focused on like, if we're not driving lift, we don't want your money.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to look at it because people know that, I mean, if you're confident in what you do and you're charging a monthly fee and then it's a small transaction fee, that says a little bit, but with you putting all the money on that. So again, we're with Dean Ginsberg with Winback.pro. Dean, what other things would you want them to know about Winback? I hope everyone would reach out. I mean, there are other things we haven't talked about?
No, I mean, like the program's pretty straightforward. It's like, you're not doing anything with this audience. If you are, by definition, it's not successful. We only charge a percentage of lift outside of the onboarding cost, which includes this deliverability audit, which I think every brand should do because of some of the things we uncovered in that process. And so really we structure it to be a no-brainer. And it's just a question of if it's the right fit. And we're incentivized to tell you, if it's going to be worth your time. So, we're not going to waste anybody's time. We're not going to waste our time. We're pretty ruthless with who we bring into the program and who we say, let's circle back at a later date. But yeah, I mean, there's, for example, we're about to release a bunch of case studies. On average, we're generating over $100,000 in incremental revenue for the brands that we're working with within 2 to 3 months. That's free money, That's free money with you're getting a 5x ROI on realized revenue. If you got that from a paid channel, you'd be ecstatic. So, if it works for a brand, we really built it to be a no-brainer and to be a big help to their program. And yeah, we're growing slowly, steadily. We're improving every day. And yeah, man, it's a lot to build.
Yeah, man, I love what you're doing. I think, especially when people are doing something success-based, it just says I put my money where my mouth is. A lot of people, we get a lot of noise out there about agencies and stuff that want big fees and then they take a percentage or they don't take a percentage because of a big fee. Yeah. And it's great to see that you guys are out there doing anything. So if people wanted to reach out to you, Dean, and talk about Winback.pro, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you just find me on LinkedIn, Dean Ginsberg, search Winback. Also, they can go to our website, winback.pro. We're actually in the process of building, like revamping our new website. So depending on when this comes out, we might have the new site up. But yeah, if you sign up to the intake form, I'll shoot you an email.
That's incredible. And plus, having you see join the wait list on there says a lot about your services. That means people are having to get in there pretty quickly to be able to work with you. I'd encourage everyone to reach out to winback.pro, talk to Dean and those guys over there and see if they can help you with their email. Dean, I appreciate you being in the Quite Life podcast today, buddy. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. This has been great.